where we're bringing you cannabis culture from a woman's point of view. And as always, here to elevate the cannabis industry. I'm one of your hosts, Ice Dawson, cannabis socialite.
And I am Dashita Dawson, the weed head.
Hi, sis. Hey, sis. On today's episode of She Blaze, a study says CBD benefits strawberries. DOJ grants cannabis. The DOJ gives a grant to cannabis. And we discussed the government lack of transparency paired with sudden urgency around cannabis legalization. You guys, I am sorry. I am struggling so much. Okay, let me tell y'all, Siri decided she wanted to come on in the middle of me giving my whole speech. Okay, my bad, y'all.
Okay. Well, thank you for getting it out, Ice.
No, Siri was like CBD search and then pulled up the whole screen. I'm like, okay, Siri, I'm glad you know what CBD is.
Okay. That's what happens with technology. No, it's all good. We got an exciting show. There's a lot of things that we've got to talk about, but of course, we've got to kick things off with the high of the week. So let's get right into it. My high of the week is actually one of my favorite places to visit and to get weekly information. BuzzFeed. If you haven't heard about it already, you behind, because it's the best new cannabis related products that are launched every day. I launched my book there. Shout out to Justin Johnson, who's also like me. He's a corporate to cannabis crossover at previous advertising executive. And so I just had to give him big props because this week BuzzFeed was announced to the 2020 Clio Cannabis shortlist. And if you work in advertising, you know the Clio Awards are all that and necessary in your career. And so he's finally got one, and he's got one in cannabis. So check out BuzzFeed.com or at BuzzFeed if you want to know all the latest or find the greatest little cannabis related products, events, programs, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, that is really dope. I'm so excited. And, shout out to Cannabis for doing big things, and shout out to them for doing even bigger things. Thank you guys for rocking with us and watching us. I was being so silly earlier in the show at the beginning. So, I'm going to give it to you straight. And, I'm the voice of the people. So my high of the week is a little bit different as the streets is talking. And Jay-Z has released his monogram cannabis brand. So we talked about there was this whole big campaign where they went state to state creating invisible cannabis borderlines. Well, now we have some flower to match the campaign. Now, he did decide to do a little bit different in terms of the market as he created 2 gram and 4 gram different packaging. He also has Lucy pre-rolls and OG hand roll. I'm very curious about the OG hand roll because, with COVID, are they wearing a mask while they hand rolling the OG? But the streets are talking and they're saying that it is white label regularness like everything else. But I'm not going to lie. I'm really intrigued with this 2 gram, 4 gram system.
Well, that feels like it could be a high, but not quite, right? So I'm happy to see that there's actual flower being produced. But are we surprised? I mean, California, this is the market. You're buying it white label.
Definitely. I'm curious to see, is monogram going to make an appearance on the East Coast? And as we get into the rest of our show, we will talk about why we're so curious about where else it will make its appearance at. So our first hot topic is about a study that was recently released out of the University of South Florida announcing CBD helps strawberry shelf life.
I'm not surprised.
Okay, I'm not surprised either, but it was published by a real U.S. science journal about biology and technology, which is important because a lot of the studies where we know this stuff already is not actually from America. And you know how Americans get, they like to have their own study, their own information, and now they have it.
So what did the study say?
Well, it's basically saying that, cannabis, CBD on cannabis, CBD on strawberries reduce microbiological growth and extended shelf life. I don't know. Basically, it's just saying that when you treat the strawberries with CBD oil, it has a longer shelf life. It put the CBD oil on the fruit for 8 to 10 days, and it lasted longer.
I think you were referring to microbials. And we have those, everywhere in our skin, whatever. And this is the part where I'm going to be sipping a lot of my tea this morning. I'm sure. Shout out to Live Pit for keeping me always with a good zen, because this is crazy. I don't know. I guess I'm feeling like it's a hot topic, but it's only a hot topic because the United States is so behind. It does this for strawberries. It does this for our skin. CBD has antimicrobial properties. And in fact, marijuana, hemp, cannabis, it cleans soil. It does this everywhere it actually is planted. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not overwhelmed by this news. All I'm saying is that we are behind, and when this is the type of stuff that's making headlines in Florida, because we know it is, what we need to know is that there's a steep learning curve. And I'm glad that they caught on to this, but there's just so many ways that cannabidiol or CBD or cannabis in general can be helpful to other agricultural growth, period.
Period, Pooh. And thank you guys for watching and settling in with us. I am definitely struggling as I get out these hot topics because, it is going to be a lot of dull moments and a lot of confusing moments as we learn more about what the government has been doing as far as cannabis legalization. So thank you guys for staying with us and listening with me through my tongue-tiedness. So as we get to our second hot topic, we are talking about the Department of Justice. Yes, the DOJ has announced that it will be giving a grant of $350,000 to the National Institute of Standards and Technology to, get this, you guys, develop the difference between hemp cannabis and THC cannabis. They want real tests, real data that determines the difference between it, you guys. Yes, I said that.
So, again, I'm sure everybody's like, dag, Dee's got this blank face. And it's partly because I'm just kind of, I'm getting to the point where we've had an interesting year in 2020, and we've revealed a lot that the government should be doing, could be doing for more equity. And one of these, things we talk about is to stop making fear-based laws. And this is one of those fear-based things to do. This is a waste of money, and not saying it's a waste of money because we don't need to be doing grants to research. We should. To distinguish between hemp and marijuana is purely, Department of Justice, by the way, is purely for the purpose of trying to determine whom to prosecute for federal offenses and who not to. On the heels of the U.S. House, passing the MORE Act, I kind of feel like, again, why are we researching that? Furthermore, it really is very simple science to tell the difference. It's a THC difference, right? And so if you have the capability of, determine or even extracting, right? You have the capability to determine the THC level for hemp or marijuana. But I think the last part that just really frustrates me is that we're going to go and do all this research, but 5 years from now, if I have it my way and the people that are really leading the way on cannabis science, we won't be bifurcated or trifurcated in this way. It won't be hemp, medical marijuana, and then adult use, right? It's all cannabis. It's all one genus. And what we need to be doing is studying that genus. $350,000 to study the genus, not to tell the difference between the two so that police officers can do their job better, right? By, again, which is what, only harassing and incarcerating predominantly Black and brown folks, which we've already established the for the first time ever, we have a government willing to say that shouldn't be happening anymore. It's like people are literally in our government, we're working in opposite tandem, right? You know, it doesn't make sense. It's very inefficient and frustrating.
No, I definitely understand and I feel you. You know, the DEA even asks people to create a device so they can tell the difference between hemp and cannabis THC. I mean, they do so much stuff. It is like, what is the point? Y'all are over policing us as a people. I thought we was the land of the free. I don't feel free when a police officer is like, nah, I can't tell the difference, so you got to go to jail. Like, wait, didn't we legalize this? So I'm definitely really struggling with what they're doing with our tax dollars. Who do they think they are to just grant this as, top priority for cannabis and hemp? You know, y'all could do a little bit more studies if y'all really care. Grant some grants for some studies, okay, y'all? Now,
or just give the money to the people already doing this in the industry. There's at least 10 people that I know you or I could personally call now that could be like, let me tell you how you tell the difference.
well, that would just be too easy. And
they want devices. They want police to have handheld devices. That's what they want. They want it to be easy for police officers and law enforcement when they need to let it go. Let it go.
The police could really spend so much time doing other things, not to even mention, from what I heard, the word on the curb is that their clinical cannabis, where they'll be doing all the researching and testing, is not that great. And so we're going to move on to our hot topic number 3 as we talk about just another duh moment right now happening before the new year. They extended the contract for the University of Mississippi to keep creating the clinical cannabis. Now,
it's one of those episodes. You didn't tell me. I don't think I smoked the right thing, Ice. I mean, if I'm being real, I'm like, this.
There's not going to be much holiday cheer. They ain't give us no stimulus check, okay? Are just executing Black people with old ass crimes. You know what I mean? Again, the police still doing whack stuff. So I mean, there's not much joy up in here. Oh, we did get a vaccine though. That's like the most we did this.
Well, I definitely am. I knew it was going to be hot topics that were sobering topics too, right? At the end of the day, this is sobering. It basically is the worst weed ever. And any doctor, been on panels with Dr. Sue Cicely, who is running a number of different FDA approved trials using this cannabis. And she herself is like, it's trash. She is part of suits, right? Lawsuits to get better cannabis. That there are lawsuits that have already been positioned against the DEA and this one licensed producer that they have. And this is supposed to be for research, medicine.
Well, they have monopolized clinical cannabis for years now. And now they just decided, hey, since y'all been doing it, do it for another year. So it was extended from March 2021 to March 2022. And there's a potential option for an additional 12 months. Now, I am just rolling my eyes because we need more and we want more. And we've been demanding more with the different lawsuits. And this is why hot topic number 4 is just so important, because the DOJ is trying to cover the DEA is trying to cover itself as they release new guidelines for licensing marijuana growers.
Gotcha. So you're saying essentially that they renewed the contract with the University of Mississippi, but at the same time, they finally have the rules for the new potential medical growers.
Absolutely.
That's interesting. So is that the hot topic number 4? That we actually have some new ways to get in. That's, I mean, I guess again a little bit of a golf clap. We remember the interim rules and we made comment on them, and so very interesting to see that the DEA has made this maneuver. I'm also, again, these are same type of ways that states started with the medical licensing. And so we need to see equity in this too. And we need to be demanding equity in this too.
Girl, the DEA first said, let me tell you something. We are not taking no special steps to ensure diversity, inclusion of minority applicants. So whatever you demanding, they don't care. It is not in this rule. It is not on the top of their list. They said that they will give all applications equal treatment based on, and it will not be based on gender, race, social status, disability status, nothing. They don't care. They just application to application, no matter who or what money is behind it. So that's what they said.
That sounds like we have a lot to work on. I definitely feel like these are the times where I'm happy to be a part of the Cannabis Regulators of Color Coalition, or CRCC. And you can find us online. We are starting to really get ourselves ready for 2021, which is going to be a heavy lift on the national and local state level because so many different places are maneuvering. And these are places we have to be paying attention. I'm not sure, but I'm going to shoot Dr. Rachel a text too, because we've been talking about the DEA and the opportunities for people who are cannabis scientists and health providers who are interested in research to getting involved. But absolutely, the DEA has, above all, arrested a good chunk of Black and brown people and have disproportionately arrested folks as well, even through cannabis legalization. So they, of all people, similar to every other state, every other jurisdiction, need to be looking at things in an equitable manner, equity centered.
See, well, I mean, that sounds like too much common sense for people. And we know some people don't have that. That's not natural. You could read 1 million books and you could still not develop no common sense, honey. So that's DEA don't have that. And they also are saying that, they are really trying to create approvals and non-approvals in 90 days of receiving the application, which is a little bit different because they weren't giving any information before. So that's one thing they will do. But again, they maintain that they are not the sole ownership of the cannabis or for any of the cultivating, and that they just really cannot create a streamlined process of approving multiple different cannabis manufacturers.
I just think, again, we have to demand more of the government. The DEA has a multi-billion-dollar annual budget, has spent multiple millions of dollars annually on a cannabis eradication and suppression program. They need to start transitioning that money, divesting that money from over there to over here. And over here is more administrative support. Or if that's not what y'all do, y'all need to just be maybe shut down. Not tomorrow, but over time, because the DEA, and that's really, like you would say, the gag of this all, was founded under the premise of the Controlled Substance Act. And the Controlled Substance Act was put in place by Nixon primarily because of the intent to prohibit marijuana, cannabis. And if we're going in the opposite direction, one would argue and say that maybe that's what the DEA needs to be doing, going in the opposite direction. If you can't figure out how to create frameworks or processes with all of your money and people that allow for the United States constituents, the people, like you said, the government belongs to the people to get what they need best, which is cannabis research. At this point, we're behind, like we said earlier in the episode. Then what are you doing exactly?
Wasting taxpayers' money, giving us performative acts. They said, please Stop writing comments. Stop giving us feedback. we not doing nothing, right? We are trying to eradicate cannabis. Y'all over here talking about let's research cannabis. Now we trying to remove it. So ultimately, again, I don't think they're doing much. There's not a lot happening, but honestly, I'm not surprised. But what really is surprising me, I have to talk about it as our main topic, is the lack of transparency the government is giving us through this process between the DOJ, the DEA, the Senate, the House, the different state lawmakers. They are not giving us real transparency as they are trying to legalize cannabis. And really, we know that when they don't have transparency on legalizing cannabis, they will mess it up. So let's get into our main topics because we got a lot to cover. Our first main topic is really about New Jersey. I mean, we did so many episodes on New Jersey between season 1 and now, but it's official. They have legalized cannabis through voting ballots, but yet their lawmakers still feel the need to create regulations that don't make sense.
Yeah, so I agree with you. There's been a real challenge this week, and maybe that's why it's such a somber episode, because we are talking about the lack of transparency. The U.S. government struggles with this, and we need more. But also, what doesn't make sense is one thing to not be transparent, but slow moving. And a lot with cannabis has always been very slow moving. But all of a sudden, there is this sudden sense of urgency around cannabis legalization and knowledge. It's like people just woke up and they now are coming to the game. And New Jersey was a perfect example of that. Just to give people a quick recap in case you're like, okay, what happened with Jersey? Well, about 4 weeks ago, right after election day, we found out New Jersey legalized. 2/3 of the vote went in favor of public question number 1, which was basically, do you want it legal or not? By a following week later, they had introduced, they meaning the Assembly and the Senate, enabling legislation A21S21. And basically, it was a bill that was 200 plus pages that didn't even have the word equity in it. But everybody that was talking about it was referring to it as the most progressive cannabis legalization bill in the country. Okay, so then we had, thankfully, really important people on the ground, Jessica Gonzalez, Leo Bridgewater. They raised the flag. We sent in the Equity Avengers, myself included, and my sisters, Ice and Imani. We all testified. I've testified multiple times, submitted multiple different versions of testimony written as it pertains to changing S21A21. And this week, it did finally pass, and it passed with a lot of amendments. And those amendments happened. They thought they were going to just get this in through sneak tip, right? They thought they were just going to get peak engagement during the actual election day. But then after that, people disappeared. They're like, oh, we won. And so we're done. No, I've been doing a weekly IG live where it's we won, now we weren't, because there's so much that's happening behind the scenes. So they introduced it, did not expect that we were going to be coming for them. And we were prepared from the first day it was introduced into the Assembly's committee. And we kept coming back, and we came back with more people, and it ultimately that and more people saying the same thing too, which is important. And ultimately, those all led to finally getting to a bill that was stomachable, right, respectable enough to not try to shut the whole thing down. But I will say, I have to go. Shame on some of these legislators for thinking that they were going to do that. Shame on the legislators for even feeding into the media that if something doesn't pass, it's just going to be chaos on the first. That's ridiculous. Shame on the legislators for not admitting that New Jersey has a very, very healthy legacy market. You think New York's legacy market is New York's market only? It's all of the surrounding states too, as well. It's just New York has the largest. And so it's just a shame that we put so much unnecessary fear around, oh, if we don't have a bill. We didn't need the bill. The plant would have been free, the people free to do what they want until a bill was put in place. And I still think we got a lot of ways to go. But before I pass the mic back, I'll just say the things we were able to add, again, a bill that didn't say equity at all now has a excise tax that is called the social equity excise tax. And essentially, it's an excise tax on cultivators. And it is going to be going towards everything that's related to social justice and reinvestment as deemed by the Cannabis Regulatory Commission. 70% of the total tax revenue, supposedly, and I say supposedly, is going to be going to the same thing, but it has to go filtered through the municipalities before it actually gets to the community. So good luck. I think there are still some real benefits of the micro licenses that they did implement. There's no cap there. And even though we saw some challenges with the micro licenses, ultimately we were able to fight for the ability for them to convert into, more established or real licenses. Before it was like no ability to convert, which means there's no exit strategy for a business. It's like, oh, you just want to be running your mom and pop shop for the rest of your life. And while that might work if you're 65 and older as your retirement plan, if you're 25, that's not your intention. And then, some of the things that we still left on the table are there's no actual equity designation. We still don't know what it means to be a cannabis equity applicant. They have social impact zones or rather just impact zones, opportunity zones, like where it's supposed to be the neighborhoods that have been most devastated. And then that's it, socioeconomic. And I think, there's a presumption that if you're a minority woman, then you'll fit somehow, but they don't call it out. It's not defined at all.
All right. Well, I mean, I don't know. I feel like, honestly, for America to have most Americans reading at like an 8th or 9th grade level, this is just challenging. Like, this is like showing off who could read the most, who is the most educated. And it's like, you want people to follow laws, and it's like, but none of these laws benefit nor always make sense. So I'm always struggling, not to be shady. I'm glad you got, like, there were some amendments, there were some significant changes, but again, it's like, these lawmakers, who do they work for? Like, am I confused on what's the definition of a government official? Because last time I checked, when you're elected as a government official, you work for the people. Like,
right.
There can't be no government without
allowing too much power. And you've given America more smarts than they have. My understanding is about 4th grade reading level that the average American is. And that's where you really put your marketing too. You don't want it to be too ridiculous. It needs to be very understandable. And to your point, yeah, these people report to the people. The government officials report to the people. So recognize that if you're in New Jersey, 2021 is another important election year. A lot of the shenanigans that was happening, and this is not just white people. This is among the Black legislative caucus, the Latino legislative caucus. Some people just don't need to get voted back in. And what we're gonna do, I think, as advocates, is like, hey, we're gonna be willing to work, but we're also calling people out in 2021. And so it means I'm not endorsing, I'm not supporting people getting revoted when I knew that they were Struggleville on the cannabis train at the entire time we've been trying to do that in New Jersey. Do this in New Jersey. But clap it up. New Jersey's legal. There's an enabling legislation. Now it's time for people to start planning how they're going to get in. But guess what? It still starts with being an advocate, because shit's not done yet. We still got a lot of work to do, but at least there's some rules in place that allow us to have some chance at playing in the game.
And this is probably, we're not going to really talk about it, New Jersey, for a while again, you guys. Hopefully not. The governor already said if it's a deal, he gonna sign it. Yep. So, it is what it is. So New Jersey, you probably won't be at the tip of our tongues in the beginning, but kudos for you for getting legal cannabis. I'm really curious on how it's going to move the East Coast, because like, as the East Coast girl from the north to the south, like when New Jersey moved before New York, but now New York, it's like on New York neck. And everybody knows if New York makes a move, all the surrounding states are going to move in the same way.
Well, New York's been talking about legalization for the last two sessions. You know, the governor's put it in the state of the state. He completely co-opted a concept that I worked on in Buffalo around a cannabis campus. And, you know, we hope that the co-option means that it actually gets done. But now one of the things he's going to have to contend with, which is why we fought so hard in New Jersey, is that none of his bills that he's ever brought to the table really have good equity built in. And New York has arrested more people than anybody else in the country, any state in the country, at very high racial disparities. And the fact of the matter is that we have very clear neighborhoods. It's even more distinct than New Jersey, but gentrification in New York has been a lot higher. And so we have a lot of displaced folks who no longer are where they were when it was the war happening, the war on drugs, I mean. And so the governor's going to have to figure that out. And I am really calling out all of the advocates on the ground in Jersey, in Connecticut, and Pennsylvania to put their foot on the necks of legislators in New York to keep it equity centered, because New York has a big debt that they need to repay to those people that they incarcerated. And New York has the $1 billion plus revenue opportunity to do that.
Absolutely. And so we will see what's happening. But on a federal level, federally, the government is surprising us. And so the lack of transparency is real confusing, because last I checked, I don't got no second stimulus check. So let's get into our second part of the main topic, which is about the Senate. Now, a couple episodes ago, we did talk about the House passing the MORE Act, and we gave a prediction of, hey, that's we could like breathe for a second, because we don't have to worry about the Senate doing anything with cannabis. They don't care about cannabis. Well, fool the heck out of us, as they did pass a Cannabidiol and Marijuana Research Expansion Act.
Oh, child, today, Cannabidiol.
I'm struggling. I don't feel well, you guys. I'm not going to lie. I got a hoodie on. I got my hair pulled back. I got a little lipstick on. But I am actually not feeling well. So I still made it.
I feel better, Bis, because these birds definitely not feeling well either. But luckily, I'm a science girl. So I'm going to correct you with love. And
it's like the covert. Let me tell you about this lady. She messaged us in our sister chat. I sure Liz going to tell you. She messaged us in our sister chat, talk about why all the boomers say covert instead of COVID. So I am having a struggling episode pronouncing stuff. So just check it as covert versus cannabis, COVID. Okay, because I'm struggling.
Listen, it was a curiosity I had, because Candy's mama kept saying it was COVID-19, and I was just thinking to myself, do all the black women 55 and older, black people 55 and older, say COVID instead of COVID? It's real. I still have these questions. Okay.
Well, you're gonna question my cannabinoid and my cannabinoid.
Oh, Jesus. It's cannabidiol, but this is CBD. And you're right. I was shocked by this. And this is where you are right about a lack of transparency, because I think this was really, really snuck in.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was a joke. I was watching the different House committees and stuff, and some of the Senate floor, where they were talking about not this. So the one time I didn't tune in, they talked about cannabis. I was like, what the heck? I was just watching them swearing a judge that had nothing to do with anything. Next thing you know, I got a ding on my phone that said, hey, the Senate passed basically kind of the same thing that they passed in the House, but a little bit different, of a medical marijuana research type of act. And so basically this bill is supported by Democrats and Republicans equally. They feel really strong about this bill that they created. Specifically, it calls out the Department of Health and Human Services and the National Institute of Health to compile a report on the effects of THC. Now, there are a few different reports they have to compile. First is how it develops the adolescent's brains. What does it do for cognitive abilities? And what happens when you use it and operate heavy motor vehicles and equipment? Okay. I mean, did you have to roll your eyes so
I
hard?
wish
They can't
I had the
even
right
hear you on
interpretation.
audio.
You know, I'm just so tired of Mitch McConnell and his antics in the Senate as it pertains to cannabis. And he always want to be helpful. First of all, it doesn't surprise me that they focus on cannabidiol or CBD because, again, hemp is his world coming out of Kentucky. They're the hemp capital of the country. And yeah, these questions are not very compelling. I am inclined to agree with the comments because there are a lot of things. I mean, we have people who have traumatic brain injuries right now, and you know, MS. There, you know, my early signs of MS, and there, I have so many curiosities around neuropharmacology. But instead, as always, I think that we have fear-based inquiries where, yes, I definitely care about adolescent brains. But the last time we researched this, we were still calling it the devil's lettuce. And what we found in the United States is when we research stuff with bias, we usually find biased answers. Point of example, apparently at some point it was believed that Black people didn't feel pain. Okay, so therefore, what was happening to Black people while slaves? They were being, you know, conducting research and all types of operations without any anesthesia. You know, we know that that was ultimately wrong, but that research that was done was coming from a bias that Black people are not human, right? And therefore they shouldn't feel pain. The ridiculousness of way we come up with hypotheses and ultimately how science is studied is still very much steeped in systemic racism. This is one of those leftovers. While I was watching the House pass the MORE Act, I did talk about the fact that there were several dissenting opinions that voted no. And one was a doctor out of North Carolina who is a Republican representative for the House that basically quoted all of these old studies around the impact on adolescent brains. I'm going to say this for the record. I do not believe in that truth necessarily, but I do believe we need to study it further. For myself, not my son, for myself, I know now as an adult leveraging cannabis that I wish I had it while I was in high school. I wish I understood cannabidiol. I wish I understood cannabis as a plant. The amount of stress that I was under as a young Black girl in the murder capital of the country, traveling by myself into the city to an all-white institution to get my education was very high. I would have performed better. And guess what? I was already an A performer. So I'm saying that for myself, I wish cannabis was available to me, but I think the only way we're going to get there is by research. I think this is a step in the right direction and that this is research, but it is still steeped in the same fear-based inquiries. And that's why, even though I am enjoying cannabis business and I'm enjoying the impact on cannabis policy, ultimately where I'm going to be in my 50s is handling my cannabis science. As far as I'm concerned, we need more people who really understand it, are not biased, asking the questions. And that's where I'll probably wind up as far as my career.
I mean, honestly, though, it just feels like, okay, we are having all these things, but I am curious because are they going to still grow trash ass weed? So you could do all these research. They did all these research back in the day, had boo boo gaga cannabis, like literal trash, and still seeing the benefits of things, right? The clinical research we have with their terrible weed from Mississippi still benefits the patient.
Yes,
So
yes.
can we get some better? Like, I'm not saying, oh, we got to do like the market where it's like, oh, it's 45% THC. We ain't got to do none of that. But I do want you to grow me some good cannabis before you start giving me any data on any research. Because, okay, I know what the gas is. Okay, I know what real cannabis do. So when you handing me an air pack and you like, oh, well, this is the data. It's like your air pack doesn't have it doesn't have the scientific requirements to give good data. I'm sorry, just you can't analyze trash.
Well,
So
I think that's so funny that you say that because I was watching a panel of doctors who use it with their patients, and they equated it to like space food, right? where it's really just for the intention of
What?
exactly the nutrients only. But one of the things that they are confused about is that they're trying to keep the THC low, 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 and all of these other things. But that's not where the medicine is. The medicine is the whole plant. THC is part of that, and it's an important part. But one of the challenges the University of Mississippi has right now is that they ain't got no terps on their flower. You know what I mean? And if you don't got terps, then you are missing a good portion of the medicinal benefits of the whole plant. And so, yeah, I do hope that there'll be.
How ain't got no smell? How's the nose supposed to nose if it don't got no terps?
It's not supposed to know. And another thing is most people are still using, cannabis or consuming it through joints or smoking. And again, I don't have an issue with smoking cannabis that or in that way. I only use my bowl. I don't use paper. But I think it's important for us to also start to introduce a lot of different delivery mechanisms as we're determining impact on brain and lungs and things of that nature. Stop just assuming the only way that we're going to be able to test this is by giving somebody a joint.
Hello. Well, last part I want to say about this act is that this includes provisions that would streamline the development of FDA-approved drugs with marijuana and CBD. So they are taking it out the FDA hands and giving it its own process, and it will allow accredited medical schools and practitioner research institutions with their Schedule I registration to produce marijuana for research.
Again, this is more signaling. I'm happy to hear about the fact that medical schools and accredited schools can participate. This is something we've been working on behind the scenes and excited about various projects in education. However, it's still a little bit challenging to understand why we're still focusing so much on this federal, scheduling. The World Health Organization has essentially recommended descheduling, and UN went and voted to do so. In the past, the precedent has been that the DEA schedule really followed the World Health Organization and the UN. And now all of a sudden, we're not going to follow that precedent. We should be talking about when are we trying to deschedule. And so that's no longer an issue. And we can really reduce the barriers to study. Because if you have to have a Schedule I license to study it, I think that's in and of itself going to be a barrier.
Definitely chaotic. The only thing it will do is allow doctors to discuss with their patients this being an alternative beneficial treatment, and it won't go against any federal medical boards. Now, honestly, this is a sad bill. It heads to the House because this is not the same bill that the House passed on the medical marijuana research. And we know in order to get it stamped and signed with approval, it has to pass both. So I don't know if the House is going to pick it up. My question is, where my stimulus check? And I mean, honestly, this sounds like a lot of stuff happening right before a transition of power. So our third section of the main topic is we're transitioning to President-elect Joe Biden's administration, and we are hearing appointees, and there are a little bit of rumors about it. Now, a lot of these things that are happening, all these guidelines and stuff, they're ran by the Trump administration people. So we are curious how it will be ran with Joe Biden's administration, especially will they roll back things? Will they move forward on some things? And so we've been talking a lot about health and human services. So I decided to let you guys know that their appointee is actually Attorney General from California. You might be able to help me with his name, Dashida, because I've been chopping up the messed up words. I mean, I know you go off the top of the dome, but his name is Xavier Baraka. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm sorry. I am having a hard day. Let me smoke my blunt.
Well, listen, I'm not well, I concern myself a little bit. Attorney generals in general, right, are problematic because the history of this country has been to prosecute cannabis. And so when you have that person as part of or head of Health and Human Services, I'm kind of like, are they going to really understand cannabis is medicine first and always? Now, hearing that person's from California gives me a little bit of like, okay, maybe they have a little bit better understanding, but let's be real. California didn't do right by the plant as far as medicinally. 1996, when this legalized, it was meant for palliative treatment, end of life care. AIDS, cancer, you're dying. That is the reason, and a lot of it's called the Compassionate Care Act, y'all, right? Like that is the reason it was legalized. And so for a good 20 years, it has been not really taken as seriously by the allopathic or osteopathic medical community. Naturopaths have caught on to it, and other non-Western, non-traditional medicines, and rightfully so, because you know what? Cannabis has been part of this for thousands and thousands of years. However, who's making decisions and who ultimately the United States population believes more happens to be MDs and DOs. And so it just got leapfrogged. And so I don't always trust people coming out of California really having a strong grasp or foundation of medicinal benefits of cannabis. I sometimes think that they still think that making cannabis medicinally legal was just the back door in or the gateway to the adult use market. And therein lies the problem with its ability to be a successful adult use market.
Well, this may be the man, according to the Marijuana Medical Research Act, and this act the Senate just passed, that this is who they want to lead the research application process for clinical cannabis. And he is the current Attorney General of California. So I am very curious of what he's going to do. Another one is Director of Domestic Policy. His appointee is Suzanne Rice. Now, she is a Black woman. Mm-hmm. And I'm very curious on what she's going to put as a top priority on the docket for domestic policy. Will we see some descheduling? Will we see will we make it so that the FDA does right by cannabis? What is going to happen? Because as a domestic policy, she kind of just oversees all of it.
Yes, she does. And some of the most recent domestic policy around hemp, that might be some of the things she has to tackle first, because let's be real, the FDA is making a mess out of that. The DEA is making a mess out of that. And so, yeah, the policies are essentially bankrupting the players in the industry right now.
They bankrupting the taxpayers in America. What the heck? Like, y'all burning tons and tons of cannabis, but y'all could test it, see if it's good, and if it could be used for clinical research. Like, y'all could at least do that, but instead y'all burning it and let it go into the atmosphere. So Suzanne Rice, hold us down, sis. Okay.
No, she probably needs to be re-educated, and all I can say is that I hope that folks like herself reach out to CRCC, because we're there to be a source of information, educated information around policy reform and implementation, because some people and some organizations understand reform, but they don't get the implementation part because they ain't never stuck around for it. And if you've stuck around for it, or you have to lead it like I do, where there are going to be real significant rubs. But also the government has to be more efficient. And I'm saying that as a businesswoman that's not working in the government, it should not take so long to do half the shit that we do.
We got a vaccine, and we got this vaccine quicker than somebody can make a baby.
Precisely. And so that's part of why people don't believe is transparency. It's all about what you're saying is like, we don't even know that was even a possibility. Most people, right? Because they don't understand the layers of bureaucracy that prevent that from happening normally.
Hello. So, she, even if she needs to be re-educated, at least hopefully she knows the bare minimum of do right by us. Cause DA talking about they don't even care if you black or brown, went to jail for half your life to even be a part of clinical research of cannabis. So do us right, sis. That's what I mean.
Right.
And there are some, now we haven't had any official announcements as far as his attorney general, because we know that is going to be a big deal. There are some rumors. I didn't feel comfortable really talking about the different rumors that they have, but I will talk about the rumor of who they have wanting to run the FDA. Now, this is really important for us because, again, we know that the FDA controls how well medical cannabis can do for the American government. His name is David Kessler, and he was the previous person that ran the FDA during the Obama administration. Now, I was doing my little Google research and stuff like that, and I did not find him saying no diss about cannabis, but he ain't saying anything about cannabis. So we don't know where he stands. We do know he's coming from from an old administration. So how this will affect cannabis, we don't know.
Well, hopefully he has more openness to get feedback. One thing we will know is that Obama wasn't a president that didn't shy away from talking about cannabis and weed. And I mean, he wrote about it. So maybe there's something to it. But to your point, there isn't anything on the record about their beliefs. We just know what the laws were. And so the FDA right now is tasked with really, especially among hemp, really starting to lay out what that looks like. And they're already doing it in a way, like you said, it's not transparent, that it's very focused on big pharma already. The only FDA approved CBD drug on the market is a big pharma drug. And I, as a head of that, my guess is his job is going to continue to make sure that they are finalizing projects like that. My hope is that he also recognizes that there needs to be more equitable, there needs to be more access, ability for other people to get FDA approvals, but it has to be not because, from behind. FDA needs to catch up to the learning curve. So he also needs to be debriefed. You just putting together my debrief list, right? So everybody.
Oh, well, you're welcome. I'm gonna get paid for that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. She paid me anyway. But just any final thoughts around this episode? I know this was a hot mess episode, but America's a hot mess, so I thought I should reflect it.
You are a fool. And on that note, I am basically done. But no. As always, you were able to dig up the tea. This is a crucial time. Now, normally we've been on break during this time, and it was you who were like, nah, we're not going to be on break because this is when all the stuff is going down. And you're right. I mean, and so I'm glad we listened and are here really recording it as it's happening, as opposed to in the beginning of the year, like, y'all, guess what happened? Because
what
now
happened was,
yes, we can actually be active. So everyone really needs to hit these links that we provide. Everything as far as the URLs, you'll get more detail. You'll get to determine how you're going to pronounce the person's name, but you at least get to Google and be able to get ready for 2021. We have a new administration coming in, and they don't know about cannabis either. Yes, do we have our Madam VP-elect coming from a cannabis legal state, and yes, having set some precedent? Yes, but she also arrested a lot of people too. So she's still balancing herself on how to move forward. And our job is to educate first, because if I educate you or I attempt to, and you still act ignorant, then it's okay for me to be ignorant back.
Okay. Let them know how we do it in the East, baby.
Yes, that's how we do it for real in the East. But if, I don't even give you that opportunity, then that looks bad on me. And so my intention here is to really give the new administration an opportunity to do the right thing. And the right thing is stop acting like you know what you're doing, because you don't. And you haven't for decades. And there are a good subset of Black and brown people, largely women, who are leading the way. And you need to be having tapping some of us to pull in either the right meetings or in the right positions. And I'm not in no way nominating myself at all, because like you said, the United States is a hot mess. I'm not sure if I want to get on that hot mess train, but I can absolutely come in the right rooms, and you only need an hour with me, and I'll make sure you understand where you need to be going.
Well, you heard it here first at She Blaze, honey. And thank you guys for rocking with us on this rocky ass episode. And just so you know, you can always catch us online. So let them know where they can find you, Dashita.
I am always at Dashita Dawson on IG and Twitter. And of course, you can find me at theweedhead.com, me and the company. And yeah, I'm so excited. This year, despite craziness, has been excellent still.
Yes, and follow us at She_Blaze on IG. You can follow us on Facebook at She Blaze. And I mean, we're live on YouTube right now. So shout out to that. Doing something different. We are actually planning a lot of things happening for next year, but also we ending the year on the bang. So we got more details to come for the next episode. But you can stream us anytime on SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts. Watch us on YouTube right now or in the future, and on YouTube. And thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for bearing with me. And thank you, sis, for always holding me down and always keeping it a little bit shady.
A little bit shady. Who do you think taught you that, girl?
Okay. It's like pack the macaroni and cheese and add some shade.
You are hilarious. All right. Love you and have a great week.
Love you too. Bye, y'all.
Bye.